So, dear colleagues, while conflicts across OSCE area have been erupting throughout the entire history of the OSCE, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine remains the greatest bleeding wound of the European continent, as well as the most serious challenge to European security since the end of World War II. The current security situation in Europe is very challenging and will remain so as long as the Russian aggression in Ukraine continues and Russia's actions pose a threat to Europe. Therefore, the work of the word of our Assembly should not only condemn the war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine, but also focus on the role of OSCE and its Parliamentary Assembly in assisting Ukraine to defend itself. When Russia mobilized its troops at its borders with Ukraine, Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Zbigniew Rau, the OSCE chairman in office in 2022, offered an additional platform for dialogue and diplomacy to prevent the war. On February 8, 2022, during the inaugural meeting of OSCE Renewed European Security Dialogue held in Vienna, all OSCE participating states, except Russia and Belarus, reconfirmed their commitment to OSCE founding principles and their standing in readiness to address relevant security issues through dialogue in a comprehensive way. Throughout the last winter, Russian forces targeted Ukrainian energy and heating infrastructure, undermining the individual security of every Ukrainian. The situation around Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is also very alarming and creates an unprecedented risk of nuclear and environmental disaster. The weaponization of energy must be condemned. On the other hand, we can observe a disturbing deterioration of the situation with nuclear threats fueled by threatening rhetoric of Russia and its withdrawal from international nuclear non-proliferation agreements, as well as the destruction of a Novokakhovka dam by the Russian occupation forces, alarmed by the implication of this brutal criminal act for people's livelihood, natural environment, and economy of the region. It is a crime of ecocide, and I call upon the parliaments of the participating states to enshrine this concept in their national and international law. Russia should be held accountable for that, and all perpetrators must be punished. According to credible and alarming reports, for the past 17 months, and at this very moment, with unthinkable brutality and cruelty, Russian armed forces are destroying Ukrainian towns, residential buildings, schools, and hospitals, intentionally targeting, torturing, raping, and killing thousands of innocent civilians, including children. These acts might be considered as war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly must highlight the disproportionate impact of the war on the displaced population, in particular women and children. And in this regard, the focus of the work of the Ad hoc Committee on Migration on these issues is crucial. The scale of Russia's atrocities committed in Ukraine since 24 February 2022 is extremely alarming. As Ukraine continues liberating all of its territories currently occupied by Russia, criminal acts carried out by the Russian Federation will continue to be documented further. So it is important for OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to also pay very close attention to the crimes committed in Ukraine and support the engagement of Parliamentary Assembly's Special Rapporteur on War Crimes in Ukraine, Mr. John Whittingale, in these matters. It is important to allocate all available resources to put an end to the atrocities committed by Russian troops in Ukraine, investigate them, and bring all those responsible to account. The international community must employ all options available, including the establishment of special international tribunal to prosecute possible war crime against Ukraine. In this context, the aggression to establish the International Center for the Prosecution of a Crime of Aggression against Ukraine in The Hague is a significant step towards international justice. It is also important to remind that Russia's violation of United Nations and OSCE founding principles did not begin on February 24 last year. There is a long list of Russia's actions which have been undermining international security for a long time. Among others, it includes breaching arms control instruments, violating the territorial integrity of Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, systematically violating international human rights law and international humanitarian law, and weaponizing energy as well as distorting history and spreading disinformation and carrying on political repressions at home on an unprecedented scale. We should not lose our focus on Russia's continued occupation of Georgia's Abkhazia and Tskhinvali region, which are also affected by the deteriorating level of regional security. This situation has not seen any positive developments. OSCE should remind and urge the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of Russian military forces from occupied Georgian regions of Abkhazia and Tskhinvali region, in line with the European Union mediated ceasefire agreement of 2008 August. The past year has been increased tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan, with fighting and clashes taking place along the state border and servicemen losing their lives or being wounded, while the movement of persons, vehicles, and cargo through the Lanchin corridor remains impeded. A comprehensive and sustainable peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan is a fundamental for long-lasting peace and security in the South Caucasus, and all participating states should collaborate constructively in the good faith to support both countries in overcoming any remaining obstacles that prevent the realization of this treaty. Dear colleagues, over the years, OSCE participating states have been working to strengthen mutual trust, transparency, and predictability, to mitigate risks, to promote stability and security in OSCE area. Together, we developed a framework of mutually reinforcing arms control agreements and confidence-building measures, as well as a comprehensive series of commitments in all three OSCE dimensions. Strengthening security on the European continent. However, Russia's unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine seriously damaged the entire OSCE security framework. We can no longer tolerate this. Therefore, the participating states and partners of OSCE must implement a zero-tolerance governance regarding any violations of fundamental OSCE principles, including war crimes and human rights violations. The Assembly's rule of procedures need to be amended in order to ensure that in the case of these violations, the credentials of a national parliamentary delegation of a state committing the violation shall be challenged. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly should consider developing a sanctions mechanism to be applied to the delegation until there are significant changes in the policy of violating state. We should also demand that Russia immediately and unconditionally release all OSCE staff members detained by their forces and proxies in the occupied areas of Ukraine. Thank you very much.